My name is Clayton. I'll be your guide. I've got too many years in IT to own up to, really, so there's a number up there that's rapidly increasing. I've worked for chaps like Ross Perot, building data centers from the ground up. They all looked a whole lot different from the scale matrix setup here. We had a lot more equipment in them, it seemed, with less power. I help service businesses and service provider organizations, many of which are IT-centered, to apply this outside-in thinking. Seems strange considering that outside-in you can swap those words out and slip in customer-centric, but I think with all the eye candy that we have nowadays with the technology, we often forget that there's a customer in the mix somewhere and that they have much more power over the purse today than they may have had in recent years with this economy. People tend to think that I rescue what's called an IT service management project. I think I do that. I don't do that deliberately, but that seems to be a consequence to the work that I do on site with people. But my focus nowadays is making sure that the customer and the service experience is properly respected and managed. That seems to be where the game is today. If not in the business, it certainly is moving that way quickly in IT. There's my Twitter handle. I don't often tweet. I try not to. But if I do tweet, hopefully I tweet something sensible. So I'm not tweeting right now, as you can see, that I'm at Scale Matrix. Someone might be. We live in a service society and the age of the customer. And you'll see these terms creep into a lot of the analyst speak, where the outcomes dominate our thinking, and the service experience has become more than a buzzword. It's something that we seriously have to look at and get a handle on from an IT perspective. That word experience, every one of us every day has multiple experiences interacting with products, and these shape our view, our perception of value, and who we decide to do business with as a service provider. And our level of satisfaction is formed from this experience, as well as achieving the results, the outcomes that we desired, and it acts as a basis for loyalty and advocacy. Now, behind the scenes, shifting sands. There's a tremendous exodus. The US government, I understand, has put some serious mandates down about the percentage of work that has to be performed away from a government leased or managed or owned facility. For some agencies, that's as high as 40% of the work effort's got to be done remotely or via telecommuting. Cloud, hardly goes without saying that cloud was something, when I began in 1974, it was up in a blue sky, but we were actually trying to achieve what today we might call cloud-based computing, where it didn't really matter where the infrastructure, where the iron sat. We had the choice in the old days of putting it in a central location, and what a surprise, it seems to come back to central locations of choice today with the way that the hosting providers are operating. Virtualization, mirroring that infrastructure, so we have total flexibility in moving the workload around, and for continuity-based situations. Mobility, the term A3 is used for various things here. We use it for anywhere, anyhow, anytime, coupled with bring your own device. Touch, 4S. Our children have pioneered this, I think, with the swipe, select, submit interface that has now become the norm. Many of us might thank companies like Apple for promoting that, but we've got the recent release of the Surface technology from Microsoft, and films like Minority Report, Avatar, the whole atmosphere. Oh, there's a great YouTube video that you can check out if you haven't already stumbled across it. A Day in Glass 2. That's by Corning, and you'll get a good insight into the technology that's here, where people can reconfigure surfaces, walls, any presentation space and interact with it, perhaps in a hotel It's rumored to be on the back of your airline seat next year to replace LCDs, TVs, to give you a total immersion in information, total access to it, anywhere, anytime, anyhow. And it's propelled by this tough economy because people want to be able to position their product anywhere, anyhow, anytime. And voice. We've seen the automobile companies promote voice over the last couple of years, and I've not quite moved up to the latest iPhone yet because of Siri. It does some things well and other things not so well. So we've got a full spectrum of communication going on, and it's shifting faster and faster. And I swear I said this 35 years ago when I started out in IT, that the pace of technology was scary. Well, the focus has changed. The analysts are talking about the new IT organization and are encouraging CIOs and CFOs to step back and not re-engineer processes and plumbing, but to reimagine the role of IT first with this changing backdrop. And the focus is changing from the management perspective, from being a technology farmer to being someone who is an innovator. Innovate that technology in such a way, exploit it so that the business could continue to survive and grow cost effectively, and that IT doesn't become an impediment to an aspiration. To operate and be performance managed as a service provider. Now, a lot of IT departments think they already are until they actually leave the IT environment and look at the service they offer from the outside in and compare it with a non-IT service provider. And it's a huge shock to many. It's like a Thelma and Louise moment where they're not quite sure what the path out is of this type of dilemma. It's all scary for those folks. We don't really have direct contact with customers. We have a help desk or a support center or a service desk that does that for us. And to provide a customer service experience that's on par with a non-IT service business. I touched on that, but I think April 2011, President Obama put out an executive order that had that wording in it. So coming to a DMV near you soon is meant to be a superior service experience on par with what you would get if that were not run by a government agency. That's the aspiration. To deliberately engage the customer, don't allow it to be haphazard and reactive. And successful IT is where IT stands for invisible technology. We're more focused on what the customer's doing with it than we are on farming that technology. So this is all, it's almost like flared trousers. It's come around again like a fashion statement, and it's come around again with a vengeance with this economy. And as we enter 2013, we're going to hear a lot more of the outside in. Even the analysts are publishing books on that term and the need to go hug a customer. And these management imperatives are reinforced by some familiar suspects here. Agile. Well, Agile to me, yes, it was born in software development perhaps, but if you ignore that for a moment, to me, it was born when I managed data centers and I had a whiteboard behind me with a few simple words: cost, quality, customer satisfaction, and arrows, errors, arrow down. And I would say to my staff, address one of these arrows, my management imperatives. I mean, you've come in with a great idea, but which one of these things on my board are you actually speaking to? And they would struggle. So they would have a great solution or an idea or some new technology, but they couldn't move the dials. And I had a perennial 6 words up on that board for years, and it was disappointing that my staff always struggled. But the agile aspect to that was a 30-day time boxing that we put into everything to force people to think smaller and incremental rather than major projects. We seem to be back in that vogue. Obviously, the alignment word, that's been, or was, in the top 10 issues for 25 years. So there seems to be something going wrong where we're not able to actually wrestle that one to the mat. Greater alignment of the investment we're putting into IT with the business goals that are out there. The coffee's ready, it seems. And cost-effective use of all types of technology and IT resources. So the successful IT departments are actually, they've embraced the A3, the anywhere, anyhow, anytime, and the bring your own device. A lot of my customers are healthcare, And the iPad was a huge epiphany to the medical staff when they saw the IT folks, the security folks were out in the emergency department testing the security on this thing called an iPad 1 a couple of years ago. It seems years ago when they were doing that. As soon as the doctor saw that iPad, oh, is that the latest iPad? Can I have a look? He saw an icon, WebMD, clicked on it, and that was it. He wouldn't hand the iPad back. And we were actually testing the connections just through web interface with Cerner healthcare systems. So you just go browse, log in, and access the same information that his staff could access on a PC. But the fact that he didn't have to send staff to check through 28 windows on a PC, he could actually access it directly, was a dramatic efficiency saving for that person. They would take that burden on. So that set us chasing rather than leading. And we've moved a long way since then. With the full screen application, browsers may be the secondary way of getting to the information. And for security purposes, you've got a full screen browser with all the security that promises. And you've heard of service catalogs that people are still aspiring to create. They tend to be text-based and run on a website. Well, the announce of the Surface, the Metro user interface style that Microsoft's got, big square color boxes. With all due respect, we've called that the big ass button for the last year. That's what customers want, a big ass button. They don't want text, they don't read it. The most text they'll put in is on Twitter, 140 characters. So they're not going to read anything. This is the society that we're creating. So the interfaces have to be designed accordingly to meet that expectation, that user experience that's been set by video games and successful software companies that our teenagers have daily access to. So watch what's happening on the phones, watch what's happening on the tablets. That's the type of interface that our end users, terrible term really, customers expect every time they interact with a piece of technology. That's changed dramatically just over the last couple of years. And PayGo, the Amazons, perhaps the Scale Matrix folks, the hosting providers have responded to the pay-as-you-go per seat-based pricing. It's become pretty much the norm. I've seen Amazon, I've got a server that runs on Amazon, and they charge me under one plan by the number of processing cycles. That's good old familiar territory for me. How much electricity, basically, are you going to be using? What's the kilowatt per hour? Is the type of conversation that the business executives are asking my IT departments about. What is the unit of trade, the unit of work that you want me to pay? Per seat, per cycle, what can you support? The traditional IT response has been to re-engineer things, to go back in the weeds, dig up the whole garden and replant seeds. They look at processes. They think, well, best practice and process improvement is a way to success here. Or they may pick up a maturity model and try and assess what they're doing with some sort of specification in a standard or a maturity model, look at the gap and close that gap. The standard that we're working a lot with right now is the latest version of the ISO 20000, which is basically more universal. It's closer to the ISO 9000 standard. It's a management system standard rather than look like a set of processes that are described in this particular document. It's more focused on the customer. It's shifted nearer the customer, and that's the 2011 edition. But all these efforts are encapsulated in IT service management as a term. But traditional IT service management, and I want to stress traditional, is failing the customer, and it's important to ask ourselves why and to look at some of the symptoms. As a test, this is what I do with my new customers and regularly with my existing customers all the time. How many of these questions can you answer? Because this is what a service-focused service management strategy should help you answer. And they're very simple questions. What business are you in? Now, this is deliberately designed to trip you up, to scratch your head, or why are you asking me that? We're not really in the business, we're IT, unless you are some sort of a service provider that provides infrastructure services to customers. then you're in the business of, as Scale Matrix is, you actually have a business brand and a tagline that you could play back. But this particular question was posed by one of my heroes, Ted Levitt. If you've heard of Ted Levitt, good. If not, I know that this is going to be available on video, on YouTube, and also on the web. And there's various free training that we offer through the web as well. And we'll retrace this, so I won't go through it in detail. Ted Levitt was a pioneer of, some called it market-driven, but that meant customer-driven thinking way back in the 60s and 70s. And he eventually he eventually took the position up as the editor of the Harvard Business Review. And when he left after 20-odd years, they asked if he'd made a difference, and that final bullet point epitomizes his attitude. He was a bull in a china shop. And he said, well, when I arrived here, it was a magazine written by people who can't write and read by people who won't read. So he was a very antagonistic and exciting writer. And one of his famous articles is Marketing Myopia, which you can get at audible.com for a couple of bucks, or on Amazon in pocket format for about $10. And in there he talks about this question and how if you would ask a railway company like Amtrak, what business are you in? They would say, we move trains. I mean, we manage trains. We run trains around. You ask an airline, we fly planes. But if you asked a company like Disney, Disney would say, we're in the business of providing our guests with a positive, memorable vacation experience. Oh, I thought you were in the theme park business. No, that's how we do it. And a very subtle difference in the way they think about the job that's at hand is what the analysts are asking IT to do now. Step back from the implementation, reimagine the role that you are playing for the business. Take stock now, because timelines are against us. Unfortunately, Ted's no longer with us. But we take this further, working on the business side. And if you go to LinkedIn and you check out the group, BP Group, Baker Peter Group, and a subgroup outside in, this is where the Lean Six Sigma type community live today, the business application developers and the business analysts, trying to keep the handle on what business are we really in and how do we help the business succeed here. And they're repeating this. Who are our customers? And if, like some of the military, you say, well, every soldier, every flyer, there are too many, we go through the process of asking them to pick one. So it's rather like a magic card trick. So in your heads, just pick a customer community. Bear with me for a moment while we ask ourselves these other questions. What activities do your customers perform in pursuit of success? So that customer that you picked, pick an activity from their perspective that they really want to do successfully every time they're given the job of doing that activity. How do you help your customers perform these activities? So, assuming that you know a customer and an activity, as an IT department or as a service provider, how do you help your customer get that done? And finally, for now, how satisfied are your customers with the help that you provide? These are basic questions that a service management initiative answers if done properly. So you see the difference, the gap between implementing processes, looking like a certain level of a maturity model, re-engineering things, buying new software, with the types of questions that you have to start with. How often do you go on what's termed a service safari to observe your customers in their natural habitat? Many of my clients now have to do this, and that's the way they say it. We have to do it. Every month we go out with a brown bag and a lunch and a pizza and a bottle of Coke, and we hang out with the medical staff and we just sort of watch what's going on. And we point at things and ask them dumb questions. What's happening? Is that an issue? Oh, how does that get in the way of the work that you need to do? And they bring that back. And that's vital input to a continuous improvement effort that we run back at the IT shop to try and work out, is there any way in which how are we involved? Those questions come into play. And is there something we could do that could smoothen that bump out? There used to be a slide in here about the Net Promoter Score, NPS, and you can find that at their website, netpromoterscore.com, where they'll ask you, you may have seen this on an email or on a survey form, one question. Would you recommend this service to a friend? 0 to 10. And they give you a scale. If you answer 0 to 8, they'll likely engage you somehow. 0 to 6 is bad. They should engage you and ask you why. What did we do wrong? What can we do better? 7, 8, I think, is sort of middle ground where they might contact you. They should, but they might. And 9, 10, they'll probably contact you to leverage your experience. So that's happening, and they'll reward you. And they'll even turn it into a game on their support sites. So the more that you interact and engage, the more points you get, the more frequent flyer points, the more brownie points, the more M&Ms, I mean, whatever the reward system is. But traditional ITSM is inside out. That's not totally bad. Inside out's not a bad phrase. You need outside in and inside out to achieve the balance. But it's not how successful service businesses manage the delivery and support of services. I'm going to put up the eye chart here. This is a continuum that we use to try and plot the words that's in common use in an organization and help people understand which end of this continuum they might be at in their daily activities. So over on the far right is infrastructure centric. It's not wrong, but that might be the language that they're using. And you get words like configuration, an alert, an event, and they're all good words. But over on the left, you've got the customer-centric language. And so what we often do is try and gauge in our audience where they're sitting and where they're more comfortable and how much of the total lexicon they have a handle on. Now, the thing is, the traditional IT service management training targets the right-hand side. So it's actually promoting this inside-out thinking, which again, is not bad if only we've got the balance, the other language, and the other piece to the puzzle. What we'll also find is that job titles and zones of responsibility map closely to this type of continuum. So we often put another slide up that says you may be close to the customer and responsible for the relationship and for understanding the requirements and packaging those, writing them down and putting them through a slot. And then another person picks up that mail, opens it, and their job is to sort of translate that requirement, need or want into something else, check it against our capability, and they'll go have a chat with the people who really know, and we'll let you know whether we're either prepared to do that, able to do it, willing to do it, and so on. So one of the biggest complaints I think has always been around is executives saying that their IT department is so difficult whilst being helpful to work with. There always seems to be, it's not as easy as it looks, we'll get back to you, because it's very complex behind the scenes. Trouble is, with the interfaces that we have available to us, people don't have to worry about the complexity behind the scenes. So they're able just to say, yeah, but I just want to do a simple thing. And what we find is I've got, I think, 7 indicators. There are 10 that we use. These have actually been picked up by the business side of the house. Some indicators that we might be thinking too inside out. The first one is that the view of our customers, what they care about and how we serve them differs significantly across our organization. Not everyone's in tune with the customer view, and not everyone feels they need to be. Oh, that's not my job. I weed and feed the infrastructure. That's my value. Indicator number 2, key service staff are unable to state, and you've got the words there, who our customers are and what we do for them. They certainly struggle with the basis for measuring customer satisfaction. I'm going to explain to you towards the end of this presentation how you measure satisfaction and how people like Disney and these Nordstroms and Dillards who win the awards do it. 3, when compared, and I was as guilty of this, I think, as anyone in the building, more time is spent on internal issues, processes, conflicts, discussing those, than on discussing the customer needs, expectations, and the service experience that we're providing. Now, we picked up 2 E's there, which we're going to consolidate: expectation, experience. There are 4 that we need to get to grips with. Few of our decisions are explicitly driven by customer needs, and I know people say ours are, but they tend to be financially driven often. That's not what I mean when I talk about customer needs. 5, we have trouble adapting to normal variations. These are normal variations. It's okay for the customer to want something, sit down and want something completely different. I don't see that as an unhealthy thing. I see it as unhealthy that we're able to adapt to that natural, organic change in the customer situation and what they want. And we get blindsided by changes in the business strategy or our customer strategy and the behavior. Nothing new so far. We're trying to apply one rigid practice or process framework to all customer situations. Now, there's a little buzzword they use, consumer scenarios. So that's just something you'll have to live with for the moment if you want to think customer first and embrace somebody outside in thinking. That's the term that they hold dear, consumer scenario. And we don't know how our efforts, all these programs and projects and initiatives that we run, relate to the interest and success of our customers. I can tell you when it's going to finish, I can tell you the key milestones, I can tell you the resources we're going to need, but I've lost track of how this connects to the customer. Now, ITSM, if ever you see the term, you have to split the 4 words up into 2 sets of 2, because it was originally meant to be service management concepts and methods applied to the challenges of an IT organization. And with a caveat, one being performance managed as a service provider. If you do that, the rest of this is going to make a lot more sense. Today, our industry is struggling because this ITSM acronym seems to be a bit of fog that we can't get our hands around. And so people use some of the frameworks like COBIT or ITIL to try and define ITSM. That's how we got into trouble. That's not how you do it. ITSM is very simple to understand. I'll try and explain it to you right now. And then we use these frameworks as a reference to try and move ourselves or to pick up some good practice and demonstrate some of the theory and meet some of the aspirations that a service management program should meet. Now, stepping back again, the father of service management is actually a guy called Richard Norman. You can still pick his books up. Unfortunately, he's passed. He was a Scandinavian. And the first book on service management was actually 4 or 5 years before the first ITSM type book. Now, IBM did have their books on this, research papers in the early 70s, but in 1984, after many years of research and writing research papers, this guy was forced to publish a book. There's the title. You can get it on Amazon. If you do, it's a great historical piece. If you do find the book on Amazon, there's 2 versions. One's got a black cover. That's the new paperback. The ones I buy, whenever they're up there, are the beige cover, and they're like used historical documents. And in this book, he talks about moments of truth, self-service, and the other words I have up there. The service management system that we need, the systematic method behind the scenes. And this is all business speak. It's very easy to read, and it was the first definition of service management. Moments of truth, often associated with Jan Carlsen, who, and his book Moments of Truth, but he actually popularized the term. It was Richard Norman who's given the credit for introducing it. And I'm going to talk about a moment of truth. Again, people get confused between a product and a service. If ever you hear the conversation or read it and people are comparing, they don't understand enough of this. They need to go do some homework. Because as a product manager, I've led a few various previous lives, I was trained by an outfit called Pragmatic Marketing in the humble coffee bean metaphor. You can find this on the web. There are 4 types of product. The humble coffee bean, commodity. Basically, it's some sort of natural resource or regarded that way. IT is regarded as a natural resource today by many. It's there, it just works. You don't dig it out the ground, but generally they view it that way. So when you hear people talking about IT's a commodity, or I want it to become commoditized, this is sort of where they're going. I actually go to the store, there's a whole sack of coffee beans, I shovel them myself into a bag, and I take them home and grind them. And that's the cheapest way to buy or to get coffee. The next level is a good, where someone else has done some of that work. They've actually ground the coffee beans for me and put them in a bag. I still have to go to the store and pick them up and make my own cup of coffee. The third type is a service, where there might be an automated machine or someone who actually makes that coffee for me. And the fourth type is the experience, which companies like Starbucks and specialties have made a name out of, but we don't really go there just for the coffee. There's a whole lot more to it. What IT has to realize is you have to decide which, if not all, of these types, these characteristics you offer services in. We talk about services and service management. A service is a type of product. But actually, where we are today, customers consume it in any one of these four ways. And this is a pretty old metaphor. It's 50 years old, but it still stands the test of time. You can look up the good service continuum. It'll give you a classification of healthcare and utilities and where they fit along this spectrum. So service management actually helps us understand which type of product to offer. But you can't guess. You have to go talk to a customer and understand how they want to consume it. So this was all out of marketing and product management 101 training. Now the difference here is that this is all about managing, it's a difference between managing a service and service. You drop that little letter A and there's a huge difference. We're not focused necessarily on managing the application and the infrastructure first. We have to do that, but that's the invisible technology. We must focus anew, we're being told, on the service we provide. Said I'd cover a few of these terms, and then I'm going to give you a how-to, how we approach it. Service encounter. Every day, each one of us has many service encounters, which is an episode where we come into contact with a service business or a service provider. And there's a lot of actions we perform and they perform, an interaction. And some of those interactions are critical to us, and they're called moments of truth. And the customer gets to decide which interactions. So when you go to the ATM, when you log on to your email, when you get in your car, when you call someone to pay a bill, the customer already preloads 4 E's, and I'm going to go through these, in their head. The service provider has limited control over this or influence until we sort of crank it one cycle. The customer gets to choose, you got to get these things right, else I'm going to be upset with you, I'm going to be dissatisfied. So you have to work outside in and understand how that customer thinks before you can influence it. You can guess, but it's more expensive. So the businesses work this out. So a moment of truth is a vital interaction, bit of contact from a customer perspective. And each one of you today will have many of these, and you'll be let down on some, and you'll form a perception of how well someone's doing a job, or the value of the product or service they're offering, or the capability of their organization from those moments of truth. And we run these experience design workshops where we explain and show to IT people how easy it is with sticky cards and a wall to find the moments of truth. And it's really amazing that customers don't have many. It all looks complicated in swim lanes and process diagrams, and when you look at it from a customer perspective, it's like going to an ATM. You expect certain things to happen. You might get upset if some other things happen along the way and get between you and getting your cash out or putting your cash in. But it seems to be a very simple proposition from a customer perspective. And these are very simple skills. The business uses them, and it drives me nuts why IT isn't allowed to know about them and to explore them so they can really help to align and work more closely and use similar language to what their customers use. Because the customer forms a perception of the quality of the service, and in there lies that value proposition. Now, I know we've got a speaker coming up after me. We're running 10 minutes late at the moment. At least we've got a part of a crowd going for you. I'll get them warmed up. So customer satisfaction is actually designed and measured by finding these moments of truth and focusing our effort on properly managing and interacting to those moments of truth. So if you've got a vast IT organization and lots of interaction going on, yet finite resources, this is our first clue. If we could find a method or a way of taking a customer, taking an activity, watching what activity that drives inside our organization, inspecting that effort and finding the actions and the interactions we must get right, perhaps that's where we should start our improvement effort. That's outside-in thinking. Because we want to get the customer on that simple path that I skipped by. Satisfied leads to loyal, leads to advocate. And the path to operational excellence. So operational excellence is that we're confident that our staff are doing the right things the right way at the right time as efficiently and as effectively as possible. You need to eliminate dumb interactions. You've got to go find them and chop them out of the work effort. And it can't be achieved properly without understanding why the customer does what they do and how that customer activity drives your internal work effort. Service excellence, providing excellent service, leads through managing that customer service experience. And it can't be achieved without understanding the situation, the consumer scenario, in general terms, where the encounter, where they start to ask for service, where it starts and ends, and the moments of truth that it contains, and recognizing that you can't provide excellent service everywhere. Walmart doesn't do that, and the more successful businesses decide what they're going to excel at and set the expectation accordingly where they're not. Remember the 4 types of product: commodity. There are some customers that just want their IT simply delivered. They don't need all the wrapping. So if you take your organization up to a level 4 or 5 maturity level, those who don't want that are being taxed for that. They call it a tax. It's an IT tax, these maturity levels. So if you go away with anything, go away with the magic number 42. It represents the 4 E's that you must respect and get a handle on. What does the customer expect? What is the span of the service encounter? In ITSM terms, that might be a service request. Where does it begin? Where does it end? There's a little bit before and a little bit after, we'll find out. But where is the main core of the interaction that's happening between us and the customer? What is the experience we're leaving the customer with? And what emotional aspects are in play? That's the emotional genie. If it gets out the bottle, there's a tactic that I'm sure has been used against you called service recovery. If they lose your bags on an airline flight, they should apologize and offer you something. That's a service recovery program in action. It costs them money, and that's how they get encouraged to find out what went wrong and eliminate that issue. Because all that interaction when they're supporting you is dumb interactions. That's not the business they're in. That's an accidental consequence of them losing your bags. And there are 2 vital service equations: value, and you can represent these with the letters R and C. The first one, value, results compared with the cost. There's a more elaborate interpretation here. And expectation, requirements compared with capability. So that's it. Service management is about getting a handle on those. Now, someone did ask me to speak to, well, what's the architecture behind the scenes that these customers, that these service businesses use? There are 4 pieces. 1, we're chasing down customer satisfaction and successful customer outcomes. We do that by putting in place a customer engagement strategy. If you go to mystarbuckideas.com, they use Get Satisfaction to say, hey, how are we doing? Got any ideas? How can we improve? They have 28,000 new ideas on that website last time I checked. They encourage a positive engagement. They do not allow it to remain at break fix. 2, a service request management mechanism where you ask for stuff and they tell you if and when and how they're going to respond to that request. 3, a proper service support interface and operation, customer focused, not break fix. There are 4 pieces to a successful customer support program. They're called the pillars of service support. And 4, a continuous improvement program that hunts down problems and translates them into opportunities to improve. So 4 moving pieces. If you're focused on improving an individual process area, you are light years away from where you need to be to even start this game. These are the 4 pillars of support, as I mentioned: break fix, helping hand. The backbone is the 4 E's, the service recovery program I touched on, and a complaint and compliment type mechanism. That's a little bit underpowered in this diagram. In there you can put the ideas. And if you do go, I'm going to put my support site up later for anyone who's got questions or wants any help. We offer free help to any service management initiative. You'll find some of these pieces are offered through that support technology. So the approach, outside in, you can choose. You can start on the left-hand side of this diagram and go look at an individual service requests, which are encounters. Keep in mind the 42, respect the consumer scenario, and the words down the middle represent some of the lexicon, the language that equals how do we offer and deliver that service today, through what channels, what actions does the consumer perform, what is the interaction. Front and backstage is the new language in IT for managing service. Front stage, the customer sees that person and the action. Backstage, they don't. Support processes are the reservation systems or the incident or the change systems that will remain hidden as best we can. And what's the level of satisfaction? That's the approach that people are taking now. The alternate is the traditional ITSM approach, where you go to the right-hand side and we go in and we try and unpick or re-engineer processes. And you can just gauge how much of this picture we're missing. You can marry outside-in thinking, which means hug a customer, with continuous improvement. We don't run an ITSM project. We don't need it. We just need to have a willingness and attitude to find a problem and translate that into an opportunity to improve and get management to vote things through a pipeline. I have a problem. I've stated its impact. Do you want me to focus any more attention on it? Yes, it moves. I've had a look at the reasons. I've got some ideas. In fact, we have a solution. Do you want me to make a change? Yes. So that's what we present to management. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, we're sitting down with customers, we're looking at the work effort, and we're trying to find out where the warts and the bumps are. We time box it with 30 days, 60, 90, and we use the agile type approach to this so that we can now, some of the great technology that's out there, it's got a strange name, Greenhopper from Atlassian, very cheap, $10 for 10 users to get online and run an agile continuous improvement program. Trello is free, and it visualizes in bright colors on phones and tablets that management can understand with the big ass button approach, sprints like topic-focused improvement efforts and tasks that they can authorize and move. So we're very, very focused on issues that affect customer satisfaction. We can present them to management, they can vote on them, and our smart people can make a difference. That's how we run our IT departments today. We're no longer trying to implement monolithic process families. And it's ongoing, and it's self-funding. So remember, ask what business you're in. Ask not what process to implement first, but what consumer scenario to catalog first. You should have a catalog of consumer scenarios, not services. If you're cataloging services first, you're inside out. Not bad, but you've got a longer, tortuous path to the customer. Design and manage the service experience. This is what the customers feel, and approach it one request at a time. And the path to operational excellence and service excellence must go through thinking and acting outside in, else you'll be guessing. I write books on this, and there are worldwide certificate programs. So, as they say, see me after if there's any interest in that. I think there's practitioner guides. The large icon on the left is the main one. It's like a telephone directory with all the languaging. It's heavy. And last Monday, they announced worldwide self-study, certify yourself, webcam proctored for some of this. So we tend to paint by numbers is online, and get in a room with an expert with a whiteboard and bring your problems in. A clinic is the sort of way that we go about helping people, as to try and lower the cost. And that's just about right. 2 minutes for questions. If you need any help on any aspect of service management or ITSM, go to the support site there. We've just moved it up to a new website, and it's complimentary. We don't hammer you on your email. It helps grow the knowledge base behind the scenes, support.usmbop.com. Twitter is okay, but it's a little bit public. Or you can email me, and I'll gladly help in any way that we can. Any questions? Then I'm going to let the next chap get ready. He's going to need a couple of minutes. Thanks very much for spending some time with me. I'm going to be around. I know some of the Scale Matrix guys, they put on a great show. So enjoy yourselves today, and I hope that the rest of your day you can continue to learn. I'm learning things already. And my dad told me, learn one thing, new thing every day, and you'll be a very smart person by the time you're my age, son. Thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate it.